friends, welcome to my program, Candid Talk from Northeast. Today, I have with me eminent poet and translator, Dr. Robin S. Ngangom from Manipur. Dr. Robin S. Ngangom is a bilingual poet from Imphal in Manipur who writes poetry in Meitei Lon or Manipuri language and in English languages. A teacher by profession, Dr. Robin S. Ngangom teaches English in Northeast Hills University of Meghalaya. He has 4 collections of poetry in English titled Words and the Silence, Time's Crossroads, The Desire of Roots, and My Invented Land, New and Selected Poems. He also translates poems from English to Manipuri, English to Meitei Lang, and vice versa. His poems have appeared in many magazines and journals like the New Statesman versus the Literary Review, Planet, the Welsh Internationalist, Kunna Pipi, Kavya Bharati, Chandrabhaga, and others. His poems have also appeared in different anthologies of national and international repute. He also co-edited Dancing Art, an anthology of poetry from Northeast, published by Penguin India. Recipient of Udaya Bharati National Award for Poetry and Katha Translation Prize, Dr. Ngangom says that he is a historically forgotten, politically overlooked poet from the nook of a third world country who believes that poetry cannot do without love. Welcome to my program, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes, sir. My first question to you is: you are a poet and you write in both Meitei Lang and English languages. You also translate poems from Meitei Lang to English and vice versa. How were you drawn to this beautiful world of literature?
I can't put a finger on it. I mean, it's difficult for me to say how or why. I was drawn to to the world of verse and fiction.
Yeah.
There are many causes. I think I've always been the brooding type, mostly lonely, or I might have this unconscious desire to be alone sometimes, even as I paradoxically crave the company of real people. So that perhaps drove me to as you mentioned, the world of literature. So I then of course an overactive imagination,
yes,
which conjured
yes,
from a romantic world engendered by songs and stories, and later these songs and stories fleshed out by say real women.
yes.
So I maybe I tried to escape into this world of books that I devoured, hidden in a corner of the attic. Let me quote from my autobiographical essay, about first attempts at writing.
Yes.
I wrote my first faltering line in the relative innocence of childhood. I was about 11 or 12 years old then.
Yeah.
caught as I was in the flush of youth,
Mm.
I wanted to explore the world by writing, you know,
Yes.
decorative and, and sentimental poetry. Since life was ignoring me, I thought I could engage the attention of like-minded hearts through
Uh-huh.
friendly, friendly soft-hearted verse. So
Mhm.
my poems are mostly inspired by romances and adventure stories, especially the Arabian Nights stories from the Arabian Nights. So it was essentially, very dreamy eyed adolescent stuff in
Yeah.
and I would still describe myself as a romantic poet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in that way you have, yes. Sir, also please tell us about your something about your childhood, as your childhood
Mhm,
memories often
mhm,
shape important metaphors in your creative work.
mhm, mhm. I don't know if it was an ordinary childhood. I
Yeah.
was touchy, um, uh, painfully shy, and perhaps physically cowardly.
Uh-huh.
So me these made me very vulnerable
Uh-huh.
to many things, to trauma, for example.
Okay.
And but anyway, earliest childhood memories uh, would point to a passing of innocence mixed with happy and traumatic days.
Yeah.
Mm, to borrow this Israeli poet, Amikai's,
Yeah.
crucial crucial insight.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, the happiness, I think, is true of not just childhood memories, but all memories.
Yeah.
Memories of happiness uh, is always blurry. They
Yes.
fade very quickly. So, and the painful memories, we keep returning, and we
Yeah.
remember them very precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the pain is precise and memorable, as if in my case, as if childhood was relentlessly preparing me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for the pain of
Mm-hmm.
living through middle age.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to begin, concerning childhood, but perhaps uh, you know a short poem will help. It's titled "Home."
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Your
Memories
reflections
of
are the reflections are in your poetry.
Yeah. So can I read a
Yeah.
short poem? It's called
Mm-hmm.
"Home," about where I thought childhood.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
home, um, slippery paths. This is a home in Imphal. Okay,
Yes.
where my childhood happened. So home, slippery paths between head and heart.
Mm-hmm.
That home for the aged.
Mm-hmm.
A brother who held his hand to the hilltop, where a shrine to the benign goddess stood, until his brother let go of his hand. A sister who sang 60s pop when dancing the twist across
Yeah.
his marveling eyes, until her mind twisted with forgetting. A river that raged and hypnotized him like a small prey with swirling brown waters until it died, strangled by garbage. A wasp nesting attic where he pored over stolen adult books until the attic flew away one night with his fantasies.
Yes.
A pillow, a pillow inside which he hid his first letter of love, stars droppings. Okay, that's the poem
Yeah.
about my child.
Yeah. Quite an
Okay.
intense one. Quite an intense one. And sir, your first collection of poetry was Words of Silence, which was
Mhm,
published in 1988.
mhm,
What
mhm.
was the backdrop of that silence you wanted to relate through your poetic words? Was it
Okay.
induced by a volatile situation that
Mhm.
erupted from an endless conflict situation?
Uh, I can't remember now exactly why I chose this particular word.
Uh-huh.
Silence.
Okay.
Is it the silence? Is it the silence which comes after creation, or the silence after the audience has left?
Uh-huh.
Uh, um, Incidentally, for me, the best poems are those that you read in the
Mhm.
silence of yourself, uh, at the dead of night, perhaps.
Mhm.
Not the poems which want to climb on the stage.
Mhm.
So I agree that the silence can be induced by a great tragedy.
Yes.
The the volatile situation that you mentioned.
Mhm.
Um, um, I remember this line from Shakespeare's Hamlet. The dying Hamlet was dying, and he
Mhm.
uh, this line. He died with his words. The rest
Mhm.
is silence.
Yes.
So, uh, so, uh, 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 so tragedy, which may seem
Yes.
never ending. The volatile
Yeah.
situation that you talked about. But
Yes.
silence. I think I chose the title of my first collection from one of Pablo Neruda's poems.
Mhm.
I don't remember the poem, but incidentally, Neruda has a wonderful poem on silence.
Yes.
Um, and if it's all right, I mean, if
Mhm.
you
Sure. Sure.
I will read this poem to you. It's a wonderful poem. I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll love it. Title of the poem is "Keeping Quiet."
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still for once on the
Yes.
face of the earth. Let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second and not move our arms so much.
Mhm.
Um, it would be an exotic moment
Mhm.
without rush, without engines. Um, we would all be together in a sudden strangeness.
Mhm.
Fishermen in the coves harm whales, and the man
Yes.
gathering salt would not look at his hurt hands.
Mhm.
Those who prepare green wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors,
Mhm.
would put on clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity.
Mhm.
If we were not so single minded about
Yes.
keeping our life moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness
Yeah.
of never understanding ourselves. and of threatening ourselves with death. Now I'll count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. That's the
Yeah.
pose.
Yes. Yeah. Silence is many, forms, and it is such an unique metaphor in poetry. And you
Mm,
experimented with that metaphor in your first collection of poetry. And your
mm.
poems still bear the scars of that volatile situation in
Mhm.
your state. Do you feel sad at times that violence has been become an endless saga in Manipur, and poets like you still have to create metaphors on the backdrop of that volatile situation?
I think mm, the sadness is inevitable,
Yeah.
just as much as violence and suffering are inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, you know, Buddhists talk about dukkha or suffering. Which is, I think, a uh, fundamental aspect of life. It is inherent,
Yes.
in life. So I've always felt that joy is something which we create, uh, or enact,
Mm-hmm.
and it fades immediately. But tragedy,
Yes.
is something which mankind has inherited, naturally. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's it strikes and it strikes everyone at one point. It would come to your life inevitably, tragedy at
Yes.
one point in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, but of course, poets would not invite. I mean, consciously, we will not invite
Yeah.
violence or tragedy. Um, but ironically,
Mm-hmm.
suffering or violence,
Mm-hmm.
uh, comes sometimes the great subject matter
Yes.
of much
Yes. Very
poetry.
true. Yes.
Yeah, and
We have seen that
I,
in other forms of art like Kanhailal's play, the unique
Mhm,
metaphors he created.
mhm, mhm. I remember, W.H. Auden,
Yeah.
great poet, you know, mm, he had, Ireland's troubles uh, or violence in
Yes.
mind, and he said that, I'm using his words, mad Ireland. He used the words mad Ireland and hurt. Mad Ireland hurt W.B. Yeats into poetry. So the important word here is hurt,
Yeah.
which created a great poem, such as Easter 1916, W.H.'s poem. Or,
Huh.
there are many examples. Or take Pablo Neruda's poem,
Mm-hmm.
titled "I'm Explaining a Few Things About the Spanish Civil War," where he depicted, um, killings or murders. He refers to them as murders and revenge,
Hmm.
and they become universal. These are universal things. Where he in this poem he has these famous lines. He says, "Come and see the blood in the streets."
Uh-huh.
Because his poetry, after his first-hand encounter or experience of the Spanish Civil War, you must have heard about this infamous incident uh, of uh, 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 of Guernica, uh, where this Basque city
Mm-hmm.
or town was bombed by actually by the Nazis, and Spanish the Spanish dictator General
Mm-hmm.
Franco, who Germans to bomb this Spanish city, and it was on
Yes.
a market day. So
Yes.
many people died, and Picasso has this
Yeah.
famous painting called Guernica.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yeah, of course. Yes.
after this experience, after his experience of the Spanish Civil War, Neruda said that he 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 perhaps stopped for a moment writing about his beautiful land, Chile, and about the lovely women of his country.
Uh-huh.
So he said he asked the reader, "You might ask me why I have stopped writing about these things."
Mm-hmm.
But then he gives this: "Come and see the blood in the streets. That is why I have written such a poem."
Mm-hmm.
You know, explaining a few things. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is the same would be true about the situation in Manipur.
Yeah.
This cycle of violence, and I have a poem titled "Native Land," uh,
Invented land.
which
Yeah.
yeah, no, not yeah, it's in my invented land, but the title of the poem is "Native Land,"
Mm-hmm.
um, which I think evokes this cycle of violence, or the cycle of brutality and
Mm-hmm.
retaliatory violence.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So that is what I feel about
Mm-hmm.
this conflict situation that you referred to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sir, also memories often plays important role in your poetry, and these memories are often not phone memories. In your poem titled "My Invented Land," you have written some haunting lines like "My home is a gun praised against both temples, a knock on a
Mhm.
night that hasn't ended, a torch lit long after the theft, a sonnet about a body counts, undoubtedly raped, definitely abandoned in a tri-state tyranny. This poem has a reference to Nehru's famous speech delivered on August 14, 1947, on the eve of India's independence. Will you please share
Yes.
with our viewers about your experimentations of memory as a metaphor in your poems?
Um, I also think about memories kept in my. Uh, we all carry these
Uh-huh.
our traditional bags, our embroidered bags. So
Yeah,
I
like
often
you have
used to.
another most wonderful poem called My Native Land, which is
Mhm.
again on the backdrop of
That's the one
memory,
that yeah,
some haunted memories.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly, yes. So I often dip into memories embroidered bag, to write poems.
Mm-hmm.
And memory sometimes, uh, can can ambush you,
Yeah.
anytime, anywhere. But I'm also selective when it comes to using memory in my poems.
Mm-hmm.
So childhood and home, engender powerful memories, as much as the memory of love,
Mm-hmm.
both the emotional and erotic kinds. Uh, I, you know, I experienced, I had no experience of Wordsworth's, visionary gleam, as he put it in one of his poems during my childhood. But there is quite a bit of autobiography,
Mm-hmm.
in my. But we also know that autobiography is never pure, and memory can never be pure as well. Sometimes we exaggerate our memories. Sometimes we try
Mm-hmm.
to suppress happy memories, of course. But as I said, memory can ambush you. It's the unhappy memories which keep coming back. But as I said, joyful memories, they fade away. and you
Yeah.
cannot recall them. So someone said that you know, poetic creation, you know, is finally uh, some kind of a fusion, fusion. If you can call it fusion verse, fusion
Hmm.
poetry of memory and imagination.
Ah, yes.
So memories, and the same writer said, memories are like seeds. They're like seeds which fall the seeds which fall on ground which has not been tilled, you know, on untilled ground, and we don't know what they will grow into, what these memories will grow into. But
Yeah.
I think all writers, they dip into memories embroidered bag. So, you know, what are we without our memories?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
my poems
Okay,
are
sir. Uh-huh.
yeah, are autobiographical, and of course, memories play a great role in my poetry.
Yes. Yes, sir. Sir, will you please read a poem written in your mother tongue of yours and also its English translation done by you for our viewers?
I'll be happy to. Um, First, in Maitaylon, my mother tongue, Aroy Bawahay, Mahaku Karamba, Asayvano Makoina Hangi, Aina Kumi, Aidi, Malem Amasung, Malangi, Kabini, Isingisu Oibayai, Adubu, Kambi Maigi Natte, Aigi Aswanba Aina Kangjay, Prithiviga, Atiaga, Marakta, Aina Maming Panmangamdaba, Kaya Amasul Lady. Aigi Yamna Liraba, Kangningsba, Unningsba, Amalay. Arth Yaudababu, Aina Kijay. Aduna, Ay Icham Chamba Potsak Sing Nungsijay. Samna Hairabada, Aikoigi, Lengjum the Yerek Liba, Numitki Mangal, Natraga, Nik Lawa, Tabak na Lighteng Labinu Pising. Amasung Nong Marakta, Tumin Ladiba, Chingit Tail. Makoy Masel, Chirol Tonare, Adu Orabadi Mahaki, Sereng, Nongmay Maruna, Walang Sariba Karigino. Aduna Aina Kumi, Aidi, Aigi Sereng, Singsidagi, Mayai Kaba, Malam Mama, Tap na Sandorok Pambani. Adubu, Igi, Nungsiba Manam, Natraga, Sadong Tabagi Manam, Tamak Toklaki. Adudagi Makoy na Hai, Mahaki Sereng di Adum, Napan gi Batuandagi Tarak Pangaktani. Aina Kumi, Aidi Makoybu, Leptana Kenba Uningi, Unana, Sidringaida, Nahona Hazard Torakpa Dugum. Adubu Makoy na Hai, Makoy na Kelakpa Kanda, Magi Sereng di, Machet Tagali. Amaga Samnade, Maramdi, Mahakna, Makoybu, Nungairakta, Hek Tahali. Aina Haibabu, Aidi Makoybu, Nungsrengum, Aruba Ising the Tahan Bapambani. Aigi Wahai Singbu, Yang Tibalemai the Tadaduna, Tugai Bagidamakta Nakpiu. Aroba the Makoina Hai, Maramadunani, Magi Sereng di, Ngak Senduna Tamliba. Mahakna, Asiba Masung Ning Tambabu, Pen another Tembani, Adubu Mahaki Wahising di, Kutlai Pai Basantrina, Ngak Sen Bamatok Tai. mahang ngang thok pang ngam khide lon thok ta bana magi thamoi bu pun sindur thamki masini mahakki aki bagi horak pham sumna makoina roi ba wahi iram me.
Yeah.
Now the poem in
Okay.
English.
Yes, sir. Okay, please go ahead with your English version of the poem.
It's titled The Last Word.
Uh-huh.
What kind of a poet is he? They ask. I said, I'm a poet of earth and space, possibly water, but not fire. I know my limitations, and there are many things between earth and sky I cannot name. I have an ancient desire for understanding. Meaninglessness frightens me. That is why I love simple things, such as sunlight on our shoulders, or women with firm breasts, and hills quiet in the rain. They whispered among themselves, how come his poetry is riddled with bullets then? So I said, I wanted my poems to exude a heady odor, but only the sweet taint of blood or burning flesh emanates from my poem. Then they said, his poems are always falling from arrogant heights. I answered, I've always wanted to see them fall like leaves, which turn beautiful before they die. But they said, when they fall, his poems would shatter because he drops them on stony ground. I only said, I wanted them to fall like pebbles into a pool. I'm sorry I always break my words on hostile surfaces. Finally, they said, that is why his poetry is guarded. He quotes death and freedom, but his words need protection by an armed escort. He could not speak and allowed muteness to bind his heart. This is the origin of his fear. Okay, that is the poem. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's a very beautiful and intense poem. Sir, I have a critical question for you, which is related to our identity. And imposed identity is a major issue for writers like us who live in a created geographical territory called India's Northeast. When poem Robin S. Ngangom writes in Meiteilang language, his identity will be a poet from Manipur or a Manipuri poet. Again, when he writes poems in English language, the identity instantly takes a twisted turn into a poet from India's Northeast. What will you, how will you interpret such conflicts of identity in literature? Do you think phrases like writers from India's Northeast or poets from India's Northeast has a connotation of both the writer and their creative work from the periphery and not a part of the so-called mainstream creative writing in India?
Okay, I think conflicts of identity
Yes.
do not matter to a writer, to a poet.
Yes.
We know that these labels like the Northeast or a Northeast writer or a Northeast poet or a regional poet, these are only
Yeah.
vested labels, you know.
Yes.
And identity is not a fixed thing. It's not a constant.
Uh-huh.
And echoing Jayanta Mahapatra, whom I've always admired. I would perhaps identify myself
Hmm.
as a Meitei poet who
Hmm.
writes incidentally in English.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so we are also, we are also aware that the label, this label Northeast is not, it was not coined by people from the Northeast, by the
Yes.
indigenous people from this region, but it has been uh, thrust on them, on the people, by a colonial,
Yes.
sensation. Excuse me. And it was this label was consequently adopted by post-colonial forces.
Hmm. Yeah.
But you mentioned something about mainstream literature. But is there anything called mainstream Indian literature? I'm not very
Uh-huh.
sure.
Yeah.
If we
Very
are,
interesting.
yeah, and if we are called the regional or
Uh-huh.
peripheral, uh, you know, writers, does it really matter? Actually, I have been thinking about a body of poetry. Actually an alternative tradition
Uh-huh.
called Northeast poetry in English.
Uh-huh.
Which is unique. In comparison, which has unique characteristics. It is very different from the poetry that is being written in the cities, in
Yes.
say in Mumbai or in Delhi. Some critics talk about the
Yes.
Bombay school of poetry. So, but it's very different. What we write, although we write in English, the our poetry in English is very different. Um, so I have written. I mean, concerning identity in one of my essays, I had asked this question, that could there be could there be regional varieties
Mm-hmm.
within this language poetry in India?
Mm-hmm.
So regionalism as a literary phenomenon seems to have arrived. The regional being the regional often perceived in creative friction with
Uh-huh.
the center. So if Mumbai and Delhi, as I mentioned, constitute the center of English language poetry in India,
Mm-hmm.
North poetry in English perhaps makes up the regional.
Mm-hmm.
And the alternative tradition that I mentioned, offered by Northeast poetry, has perhaps created a body of poetry that is more approachable. It has more variety. Northeast poetry in English has great variety,
Mm-hmm.
because our region, it's of course it's definitely not homogeneous. It has
Yeah.
it is the home of diverse communities speaking different languages and
Yes.
embodying separate different cultures.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that is how I look at it actually.
Yes. Yeah, yes, definitely. There is, another reality. Like when there is a pan-India outlook to impose a
Mhm.
specific identity, like writers from India's Northeast or literature from India's Northeast, it is equally difficult for writers who live in India's Northeast and represent different linguistic identities to get essence of the literary aspects of each other unless it is translated into English. In that way, it is
Mhm.
not an inclusive identity. What is your observation on such a dichotomy of an imposed identity? Like you write in Meitei language, I write in Assamese language, and we cannot understand each other's literature unless it is translated into English. It's
True,
quite
true.
difficult. Yeah.
I think I have more or less answered the first part of your question. About this imposed identity, because, and as I mentioned, I must have hinted at that. This label that you are a
Uh-huh.
Northeast writer,
Uh-huh.
it's been affixed. It is thrust upon us. So
Yeah.
So after a while, I tell my friends that I don't mind the label. In fact, I'm going to wear that label proudly,
Okay.
as a badge, So identity, it does not matter. It's these people from the mainland who have who are using this, as I said,
Uh-huh.
the post-colonial is using this label called
Uh-huh.
Northeast, but it should not matter. And translations, of course, uh,
Yeah.
are necessary, and that again, ironically, we are using uh, the colonizers' language, English, and it
Uh-huh.
has become, in a sense, uh, the link language, for many of us. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Northeast, it's the official language. English, I think, it's official language of some of the states in the Northeast.
Uh-huh.
So, translations are perhaps necessary, but I think apart from that, I think, and which uh, many translators who are writers themselves have done, uh, you know, uh, 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 translating each other into our own languages. For
Yeah.
instance, an Assamese writing translated into Meiteilon, into Manipuri, and vice
Yeah.
versa.
Yeah.
Manipuri being translated uh, into Assamese. So
Mm-hmm.
those, I think that would be very
Better.
necessary. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
this English is is uh, is important for us to reach a wider audience.
Uh-huh.
You know, so
Yes.
translations,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Okay. Sir, why, according to you, writing in mother tongue is important?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Uh, I'm not sure if writing in my mother tongue, that is Meiteilon, as I mentioned, uh, would have made me a better writer. Although it may be true that I would have learned more about my history, my culture, my language, and ancient Meiteilon,
Mm-hmm.
archaic Manipuri, especially, uh, we have a long history of Manipuri literature, Meiteilon literature, and it is written
Yeah.
in chunk of that of Manipuri literature was written in archaic, in ancient Meiteilon, which even I cannot, you know,
Mm-hmm.
understand, language. Um, and uh, you must have noticed that, you must have experienced that you cannot take even your own mother tongue for
Yeah.
granted. Yeah. Uh, because language is also, it's like a seed. Again, I use the metaphor of the image of the seed. Because language is a seed. I feel it's a seed that hides so many things in it. Language,
Mm-hmm.
which hides so many things in it. In language, in the seed, you'll find history, you'll find politics, you'll find culture, you'll find tradition, music, and crucial, experiences like the formative childhood experience.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say is, you have to keep learning your mother tongue if you were writing in it. So
Uh-huh.
I keep, I translate from Meiteilon to English,
English.
but I keep many dictionaries and
Uh-huh.
relevant always at hand.
Mm-hmm.
So writing uh, in one's mother tongue, will maybe will make a lot of difference for many. But
Mm-hmm.
but interestingly, writing in English also gave me eyes to see, and many perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, explored this treasure trove of world literature through English, which is the former colonizers' language, the Britishers' language,
Mm-hmm.
a language the former colonies have. Now we talk about different Englishes. So
Mm-hmm.
language that the former colonies have appropriated and perhaps using uh, as a resistance to oppression. So
Mm-hmm.
we are using the colonizers' language and we're using it as a resistance to oppression. So
Mm-hmm.
the multilingual environment. I mean, such as in
Yes.
India, we have multilingual, multicultural environment. Has given us more words. We know, English has adopted many Indian words. I mean, from Indian
Mm-hmm.
languages, and other languages as well. So it has given us more words, context, and perhaps our type of English, our avatar. Avatar has become an English word. Our
Mm-hmm.
avatar of English,
Uh-huh.
which
Yeah.
the British
Very
or Americans,
interesting. Yes.
yeah, then they have now they have to learn our kind of English also. They need to accept
Uh-huh.
this. Our what I'm trying to say
Yes.
is, ironically, you talked about translations. I also learned about literature from the Northeast,
Uh-huh.
of the Northeast, cultures of the Northeast, and communities, uh, and about Northeast communities through spoken and written English.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Assamese poetry, for I learned it from. I mean, I read them only in translations
Uh-huh.
from English translations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, sir. Sir, my last question is: do you think writers who represent a relatively a small population like the Métis are compelled to bear the double burden of creating literature in their own languages and also write, trans or translate or get their literary work translated into English to take them to a wider audience?
Mm, I don't think writers themselves should carry
The double
such a
burden.
burden.
Mm.
Yeah, double burden. Uh, of course, it helps if one is bilingual or multilingual.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And there is, I talked about world literature. There is something called world literature, which we can access only through translations.
Yes.
And translations are absolutely necessary, as I mentioned, because there is a risk of vernacular literature remaining unread
Uh-huh.
if it is not available in translation. Who will read if I write in a vernacular language? Who will
Uh-huh.
read them if it's not available in translation? I mean, apart from our own, uh, you know, uh, people, who will read them. So that apart, it's translation, is also how we relate to other people, to
Mm.
other stories and other ages,
Yes.
and that so our literature. So we realize that our literature is also part of world literature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very true.
Translation
Very true.
available in translation. So it's also very important that we know. It's also very important that we know what is being written in other languages and in other countries, the trends and concepts and developments.
Yes.
Someone said that if we have not read what is written in other languages in other countries, that lack, that inadequacy, it will show in your writing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so translations, I think, are crucial. But
Yes.
I don't think writers themselves should carry that burden of translating their own work.
Okay. But of course, we need some good translators.
Exactly,
That
exactly.
is,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is crucial. Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. We wish you a highly creative life in coming days. We shall definitely meet again to talk on literature. Thank you, friends. I shall come back with a new guest in coming episodes of Candid Talk from Northeast. Till then, goodbye. Goodbye, sir.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much for
much.
having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.